And you have to understand that the more authentic you are, the more you're going to make people who have masks, wearing masks, very uncomfortable. It's just a part of the journey.
I'm Heather Grzych, and this is the Wisdom of the Body podcast. This podcast explores the idea of body intelligence as the real key to learning the knowledge of life, or what we call Ayurveda in the ancient language of Sanskrit. We do that by connecting with today's creative leaders and experts who will help you listen to your body, trust your gut, and live in deeper harmony with nature. Come join me as we unlock the golden door to clear, direct perception and become very deep listeners. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also follow us by joining my email at heathergrzych.com or on Instagram at heathergrzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. So there are different ways to access the contents of our minds and to try to change our relationship with what we find existing there. Many people see a therapist, and there are different kinds of traditional psychotherapy. Many people will try meditation. That's very popular. Some people will journal. Some people will do various kinds of psychedelic medicines or other types of medicines. Others will interpret their dreams, and there are various kinds of like art therapy. Okay, so the bottom line is that there's many different ways in which people observe the contents of their mind and try to change the patterns that they find there. And many I've not mentioned. But in all my years in the healing world, I have never heard people talk about the importance of saying things out loud and actually turn it into a therapeutic treatment. So we're going to talk about this today with author Vasavi Kumar. And she is a life coach and a licensed therapist with a myriad of in-person, print, televised, and social media experience. She has written a book called Say It Out Loud, using the power of your voice to listen to your deepest thoughts and courageously pursue your dreams. Vasavi is a first-generation Indian American who grew up on Long Island and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at the age of 19. But she learned how to become extremely self-aware and take action to create the life she wanted for herself. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Vasavi.
Heather, I really like listening to you talk. You have a wonderful cadence. As a voiceover artist, I'm obsessed with listening to people's tone of voice and how it feels. Like, I'm very sensitive to tone of voice. So it was really nice hearing you talk about me.
Oh, good. I think of my voice as a little bit of a slower voice. In fact, it was way worse in the years when I was teaching yoga. I would speak so slowly that some people couldn't handle it. And now
I really like it. I really like it.
Oh, well, good. We're balancing each other out here today. Okay. So first of all, I want to start by reading the opening line of chapter 1, which I thought was just very wonderful. And it really got me into your book. The opening line reads, "Is there any part of you that thinks it's weird to talk to yourself out loud?" And I'm going to say yes. That was what came to me, because when I see people doing this out in public, I assume they're crazy. And then I want to admit right now that I'm afraid of looking crazy. And it's funny because I feel like probably the reason I have a podcast is because I don't feel like anybody in my house listens to me. So there's something to this, like needing to be able to say things out loud. And I can't wait to hear your perspective on it today. You're a therapist, and I'm sure you've seen a fair amount of different types of therapies. But this idea of saying something out loud, this type of practice, who do you think it's most useful for?
I think it's most useful for my external processors. So first of all, I want to say yesterday I was in downtown Austin for Memorial Day weekend. I was just hanging out with my girlfriend. And we were walking on the street, and there were some homeless people on the side of the street that we were on. I have the utmost empathy and compassion for homeless people. That's how I even got into this work. You know, when I was 4 years old, my mom would bring me to India every year, and homelessness in India is very different than homelessness in the US, because we have 3 times the population, but 1/3 the geography, the geographical space for people to exist. So a lot of people living on the streets of India, a lot of homelessness. But when I was walking with my friend down the street yesterday, there was one woman, and she was talking to herself out loud. And I said to my girlfriend, let's cross the street. I don't want to walk past this woman. And I did that with my girlfriend. And I said to her, listen, I have the utmost empathy for people who have mental illnesses, because I have a diagnosed psychiatric illness myself, bipolar disorder. But I said, I know where this woman's state of mind must be if she's out in public talking to herself out loud. I go, but that's not what I'm asking my readers to do. I want to make that very clear. Yes, you are talking to yourself out loud, but we see homelessness. We see people on the streets talking to themselves out loud. And yeah, it looks really crazy. It does. And, the people who you see, they're untreated and they've definitely gone through severe trauma and abuse for them to now be living on the streets and talking to themselves out loud. No one is just born that way. Your brain is developed by the people that take care of you and genetics as well. So yes, I am, yes and no, asking you to talk to yourself out loud. I'm actually making it normal to do that. But you are not in the same category of people that you see who may certifiably be, I don't want to say crazy. I don't like to refer to people that way because I'm referring to myself that way. I don't like saying that, but you know what I'm saying. I'm going to say it because that's what everyone's thinking. You look at someone who's talking to themselves out loud, you're like, that bitch is crazy, And here's the thing. They're saying it out loud, but we still have all those voices. They're just inside of our head. So who's really the crazy one? Because we're walking around with these voices in our head and not saying anything. How sane are we? At least the people on the streets, they're saying it out loud. They just haven't gotten the holistic treatment of
they just don't
medication.
care. They don't have the filters.
Yeah, they just don't have the filters because there's a lot more going on there. So this is for my people who really keep a lot inside and you find your mind to be highly creative and scattered. Because with all this, it comes a high level of creativity. And I started talking to myself out loud as a way to organize my mind. It's an organizational system for the mind because we cannot keep everything in our head. So whenever I do any sort of creative anything with my clients, the first thing we do is a brain dump. We write out all your creative ideas on paper. I'm asking you to take a verbal dump. Like before you start to get yourself into a tailspin of anxiety of what you need to do and you're running long lists, you actually verbally dump that out loud into the ether. Because as you do that one by one, like, okay, let's just start small. Okay, Heather, let's just say I have like 5 things that I got to do today. Oh, or how about this? 5 things I need to pick up at Target. I didn't write it on my phone. I know I got to run into Target and get 5 things. This is how it started for me, and I really started to see the effectiveness of it, like to keep me efficient and have my mind organized. Because as someone who has bipolar disorder, I go from hypomania to bouts of depression. When I'm manic, my mind is very fast. I have a very peaceful, calm mind. And so for me, it's like, listen, I'm the one with the mental illness here and I'm guiding you guys. Trust me when I say this works, okay? Because I'm the one with the diagnosis here. So I run into a Target, I'd have like 5 different things. And instead of keeping it in my head, because they're all loud and it's all bumping up against each other, all the 5 items I need to get, I'd say, okay, Vas, you need shampoo, you need toothpicks, you need toothpaste, you need toilet paper, you need to look at a pair of gold earrings, right? I'd say it out loud and words carry vibration. So I would like hear myself say it and then my body would absorb it and I'd keep repeating it. It's like muscle memory. Okay, shampoo, toothpaste, toothpicks, toilet paper, earrings, shampoo, toothpaste. And I'd hear myself saying it over and over and over again. And I'd remember it. And then I'd walk into Target and go get what I had to get because I heard it enough times. By the way, this is how my mother made me learn the multiplication tables in the 2nd grade. I knew all my multiplication tables by the 2nd grade because we just keep going through the tables one by one by one. I kept hearing it and saying it. It's like a mantra. That's all I'm
That's
asking
exactly
you to
what
do.
I was thinking. When I was reading through your book, I was like, oh, this feels a lot like when people are doing mantra or affirmations. But what's really interesting for me, like you're saying, we all have this content in our brains. We've got these voices in our minds going on. And it's literally like, okay, because some people like to do the artist's way, the practices in the artist's way. Have you read that book?
Yes, Julia Cameron, love her.
It kind of something.
But I'm not a person who does morning pages. I'm like a morning talker.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. It's just like a different medium to come out of it.
It's your voice. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we've all done it. But so what I'm hearing is that for you specifically, this practice was so helpful for you to create a structure with it.
And also to use different voices when we're talking to different parts of us, different tones of voices, and play with our voice. So for me, tone is very important. Like I said, I was raised by immigrant parents. My mother was an extremely harsh woman. She still is. The tone of her voice still gives me anxiety to this day because she's so harsh, and she will openly admit that she's harsh. I'm not saying anything that's not true. So I'm very sensitive to tone of voice. And so for me growing up, I internalized her tone of voice as my own tone of voice. So I would talk to myself like she would talk to me. But I also really had a lot of intrusive thoughts, and the intrusive thoughts were nothing more than the voice of my mother. So I had to learn how to really understand the difference between my voice and the voices of everybody else that were much louder. And that doesn't just include my mom or dad, that includes other family, that includes friends, that includes media, what media tells us. Eventually, we have to find our voice. I call that the bold voice, our
Mm.
bold voice. The bold voice is the voice that not only will look out for you, but is also the voice that lights the way for other people.
Mm.
Because the last chapter of my book is to live your life out loud. And so, what is really the purpose of like the book, Say It Out Loud? Why do we want to talk to the voices in our head? Because when we actually learn to get to the root of what we want, we can then start to really live our life out loud. Living our
Mm.
life out loud gives other people permission to live their life out loud. This life is not just for us, it's for
Mm.
other people too. But in order for us to be of service to other people, we have to understand who we are and what we're here for. And you can't do that when it's loud inside your mind.
Mm. So true. We got to do the work, right? Okay. So I love the way you worded this in your book because I think so many people can relate to this. You said, I've been given many opportunities to bring together the parts of myself that split off from me through the various experiences in my life. And you write about how the very thing that got you in trouble as a kid is now the foundation of your work. So, how did this happen? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I would talk to myself. I would watch my father admire himself in front of the mirror when he was getting ready. So I'd watch my father comb his hair and put on his tie and get dressed, put on his three-piece suit. I watched my father, and he would just always say, look at himself in the mirror, and he'd be like, don't I look so handsome? Today's going to be a great
Mm.
day. And my dad always talked like that. So I learned that from him. It wasn't weird. It wasn't weird to praise myself. It wasn't weird to celebrate myself. I can't hang out with anyone who doesn't celebrate me. I'm not saying you got to kiss my ass and say I'm the most amazing person, but I am used to celebrating myself and really loving who I am. So I can spot jealousy and envy a mile away. Because when you're in the habit of celebrating yourself, you know what that feels like. And you also know what it doesn't. Like you also can sense when it's not being exuded by other
Mm.
people. So I learned from a very young age, like my words were very important and I can use my words to celebrate me and pump me up. My father showed that before a big meeting. He'd say, big day, I'm going to do, he'd pump himself up. So that was really cool that I learned that by my dad modeling it. And then when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 19, one of the symptoms of mania is racing thoughts. And so after I got diagnosed, I just immersed myself in learning about bipolar disorder. So I was like, okay, manic thoughts, racing thoughts. Okay, so all these thoughts are going really fast. Let's slow down. What are each of these thoughts telling me? And so each thought became a subpersonality or a part of me, and each part of me had its own voice because it had its own persona and its own personality. So we are multiple people, right? I'm not just vulnerable Vasavi. I can also be vixen Vasavi. She's really sexy. Watch out. I can also be vicious Vasavi. Don't cross me, right? Like we have
Mm.
different parts of us, and each part of us has its own personality. Vixen Vasavi might be more seductive, have a more seductive, sensual, maybe lower tone, softer voice. Vicious Vasavi, might just have a very cold, dismissive tone of voice. Vulnerable Vasavi might have some tears. She'll be much softer. Vigilant Vasavi is like determined, right? Every single one of us has different parts to us. So we have to know which of these parts and which of these voices are ours and which don't belong to us. I didn't know
Mm.
where other people ended and I began, period. So this work has really helped me become me. And
Wow.
I can guarantee it will help other people become them. So you stop living your life according to what other people think. I have a neighbor, she's 22. The matriarch of her family is her grandmother. They run a very large company. And she's like, what, 20 years younger than me, right? She's 22, I'm 41. Okay. So I'm 19 years older than her. We go for a walk every morning. We were talking about her career, what she wants to do. She looks up to me. She's a wise soul. We talk to each other. And I said to her, well, have you ever thought about this? And I gave her a suggestion. And she goes, no, 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 my grandmother wouldn't approve of that. I go, who
Mm.
the fuck cares what your grandmother thinks? It's your life. Like, are you kidding me? But that's what I'm talking about. People don't make choices for them. They make choices reactionary, right? To what they think the other person's going to think. That is no way to live. You need to distinguish the voice of you, the voice of other people, a voice in you that tells you, you should do this, you should do that. It's like, no, I don't have to do anything. There are no rules. I get to decide.
Yeah. I've been talking about this a lot recently, this idea of like emotional suppression. I recently interviewed a UC Berkeley researcher because basically, being an Ayurvedic person, I'm super interested in when you censor yourself in certain ways, when you have an emotional experience, what does that do to your body? Like there is a humoral response, there is a physiological response. In like Ayurveda, there's words for this. There's not words for this in the English language. In Sanskrit, there are words for it, the dosha.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
basically, like what happens to the body? But what I found fascinating was that there's so much research around people being, letting their emotions fly versus suppressing them, and then who lets their emotions fly more. And that there was research that said that people who are higher in like social power will
Mm-hmm.
actually let their emotions fly more, which I thought was super fascinating. And you mentioned a term in your book that I wanted to dig into today, which is emotional perfectionism. So, can you talk a little bit about what would that feel like in our body or in our thoughts? Like, what would we notice when we're doing emotional perfectionism?
Yeah, so I want to first give credit to Dr. Annie Hickox, where she's the first person, I believe, who coined this term. I want to give her credit. And I really love that because we talk about like perfectionism when it comes to like doing things, but what about with our emotions, right?
Mm,
So, emotional perfectionism, how it feels in our body. Well, first of all, let's just call it what it is, right? Like some emotions are okay and acceptable to show, and some aren't. We have a perfect way of how we want to show up. My sister is a great example of this. She will never show her anger or irritability. She'll always have front facing a very pleasant face, always, even though inside I know she's stewing. And I know this because she's my sister and I know my sister
mm,
very well. So she will not show anger. She'll never show irritability. So we've talked about that a lot. But how this feels in our body, I can imagine, because I've experienced this in romantic relationships. My emotional perfectionism showed up in romantic relationships because I didn't want to be like my mother. My mother was very irritable growing up. So I didn't want to be like that with the men in my life. But then I'd often attract very codependent relations. I was in very codependent relationships because I was not honoring my needs, right? So I just want to say that to your listeners that it's nothing to be ashamed of. We all do it in our own way. Okay. You just have to be honest with yourself about where you're doing it. So, how it feels like in the body is just, I don't do it at all anymore. I do not suppress my emotions. If I feel something, I feel it, and that's it. But I can imagine that it feels very constrained and constricted because I remember my throat would really close up a lot. Like when I could
mm,
tell that I was suppressing an emotion, like near the thyroid area. And ironically enough, I do have Hashimoto's, which is a autoimmune,
mm,
but my throat would close up, get really tight when I would be suppressed. I also developed a lot of lower back pain, a lot of lower back pain, and then also shoulder pain, like I'm carrying the burden of other people's emotions and it's
mm.
weighing me down. So it cannot have a good effect on the body. My father is the kindest, most generous man in the world, but the man had no boundaries and he was such a people pleaser and he suppressed so many of his emotions. I don't think it's any mistake that he now has a rare neurological condition called supranuclear palsy, where he's basically frozen inside of his body. It's like
Oh,
atypical Parkinson's. His gait, he falls all the time, so my mother cannot leave his sight, and he's frozen. His muscles, everything is frozen. And I think my mom and sister are both Western medicine doctors. My sister's an oncologist, and my mother is a cardiologist. My mother, because she's old school and she's from India, so she studied a lot of Ayurveda too, she totally agrees with me when I say he froze himself into this because he never spoke. Where's all that stuck energy going? Where's all those unspoken words going? He's frozen. He can't even
mm,
speak now because he
wow,
suppressed so much. So,
wow.
yeah, even talking about it, there has to be a connection. I'm seeing it in front of my eyes, watching my own father almost freeze to death. But he's frozen inside of his body. And my father, a lot of times, I remember now, like when my dad got anxious, he would freeze. His eyes would just be like a deer in headlights and he would freeze. He was in a stunned state.
Wow.
And so I do think there's a correlation to that. I think a lot of women struggle with either over explaining or underusing their voice.
Wow. That's a really, really powerful example. I'm so sorry that's going on with your dad. I actually, years ago, when I was teaching yoga, I used to teach yoga at like a clinic for boomers mostly and like people who had some sort of mental or physical trauma. And we had a client who had that. I know it's not easy. So sorry. And it's also, I mean,
It sucks.
we're around the same age where we're starting to see our parents what happens when you live your life a certain way, how it accumulates in those aging years when our metabolism isn't as strong and our defense mechanisms aren't as strong, and where the body can't kind of it just succumbs to whatever patterns it's created, And yeah, so growing old is hard, bottom line. And, this idea of, I guess, so you're saying that you feel that emotional perfectionism, or at least emotional suppression that we were talking about as a broader category, that could have a physical implication. And what do you think happens, not just to, obviously that can have implications for the physical body, but to the relationships around us when we choose to kind of garden or manage ourselves in a certain way? If we make a different decision to allow the energy to flow differently, what does that do to the environment around us and to the people around us?
I just feel like you have so much more fluid connections and it's not so strained. But also, you might notice that you don't jive with a lot of people. Maybe you have a lot of people in your life because you're just matching everyone's energy. But and I have found personally in becoming more of myself and feeling more comfortable and calm and safe within my skin, I have less people in my life, but the relationships are way richer. Way richer. I mean, I just don't force myself. If it's not there, it's not there with somebody. If I don't feel the connection, I can sense when people are closed off because I'm open. I'm open. I'm nothing to hide, right? I'm like saran wrap. I'm transparent. And so I'm very open, but I'm boundaried. I'm open hearted, but I have boundaries. It's not like I'm open, open gate, revolving door into Vasavi's soul. I'm an open hearted person, but I am protective. But I'm boundaried, which means I have no problem communicating my boundaries. So I can really tell when someone is not comfortable in their skin because they act all weird. It feels weird. It's like you could tell when someone's awkward in their skin. And so I don't force those relationships anymore. I would try to always make everyone feel comfortable in my presence. But I felt like in order to do that, I had to match people's energy. And I don't need to do that. So I don't force connections anymore. The connections that I have are easy peasy, loving, clear, communicative, direct, transparent, honest, loyal. That's it. That's it. It's easy. We work stuff out. If there's an issue, that doesn't mean I don't argue. My best girlfriend here, Sylvie, if I have an issue with her the other day, something happened. We have such a loving relationship, but I said, hey, can we process something real quick? She's like, yeah. I go, hey, when you said this the other day, I felt like this. But I have such a high level of observation of myself. I go, I can see what's going on with me when you said that. I go, it has nothing to do with you. I go, but this is where I'm coming from. I go, I think this is what I need moving forward. And we talked about it, done. 5 minutes, we're done, over. On to our next thing, When you're a clear channel and you don't have all this ego in the way, getting of oh, no, she's like this and getting all defensive. And you're just like, hey, I'm just going to communicate what's up. You could tell, can someone meet you at that? But your job is to be clear and your job is to speak your truth. People will either match you or they'll try to gaslight you or they'll try to have a superiority over you. And you'll know when someone matches you because it's like a nice back and forth. You're not in defensiveness. I have people in my life, they don't know how to respond to me now that I've written a book. They don't know how to treat me. I can tell they're kind of putting me on some sort of pedestal and they act all weird around me. And it's like, no, you don't need to pedestal me. I'm still the same girl. You don't need to be weird. But I can tell other people feel weird around me because of their own shit. But normally I would feel like I have to match that person. All of this to say is when we free ourselves from emotional perfectionism and we allow ourselves to just be clear channels and say what we need to say with dignity and kindness, doesn't need to be bitchy. People think being bold and saying it out loud means you have to be, no, you don't. You don't have to cut anyone at the knees for you to be confident and clear. You don't need to bring anyone down for you to be clear. My book is really to help people understand the truth of who they are so they can lead with love and lead with integrity and lead with truth. And you have to understand that the more authentic you are, the more you're going to make people who have masks, wearing masks, very uncomfortable. It's just a part of the journey.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's like you have to only own your stuff. You can't own everybody else's too. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about this from a practical perspective. What does this look like? So what kinds of things are important for us to say out loud? Like, I'm making jelly toast. I'm brushing my hair.
Yes.
I mean, is it trivial things like this? Or are we talking about the big things?
It can be all of it, right? I think I don't meditate, right? I'm very present with everything that I do. I don't sit and meditate. When I do something, I'm present with what I'm doing, everything. I'm not scattered. So if you want to use it as right now, I'm brushing my teeth. Right now I'm washing my face to keep you in the moment. Cool. Start with that. Start to
I'm
become more
itching
present. Start
my face.
what?
I said,
I
right now
wish.
I'm
Yeah,
itching
yeah,
my.
yeah. Right now I'm itching my face. It's about naming it. When you name it, you can do something with it. When you name it, you can be observant of it. You can become aware. So I don't obviously say out loud, I'm brushing my teeth right now. Like I don't need to do that. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
it's usually when, honestly, when I'm in creative brainstorming and I'm planning stuff and I have ideas, I'll say it out loud. I'm like, all right, but what if I do this? What if I make this a 6-month program? And here's what I'm going to be teaching in the 6-month program. And I'll hear myself say it. I'll hear myself say it. When you hear one thought out loud, it then triggers another thought. That's why creative brainstorming with a friend, right? Haven't you ever
Mm.
wanted to have to brainstorm something, but you're brainstorming with a friend and it's so much easier because one thought will trigger a thought in her, a creative idea. Like you go back and forth in creative brainstorming because when you hear somebody else's thought, it will spark something inside of you and vice versa and
Mhm.
go back and forth. You can do that with yourself.
Mm.
You are the other person too. You can be both your coach and your client. You can be both your therapist and your client. You can be both the parent and the child. And so this is really good for people to become more emotionally self-sufficient, right? So many of us are going to other people to get our emotional needs met because we don't know how to get our own emotional needs met. But when you can learn how to tap into different energies and parts inside of you and learn how to speak to yourself in a kind, respectful, compassionate manner, you're less likely to go to people who have been disrespecting you. You are more likely to walk away from one-sided relationships because you are whole within yourself, because you meet your own emotional needs rather than having other people try to meet them when they're not qualified to do so.
So tell us a little bit about. I love this, by the way, because someone like me, I probably use other people enough as mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a DIY kind of girl, but I could see, and I love brainstorming. I used to lead them back when I was in a corporate life. But
Yeah, it's exhilarating. I
yeah,
do that with my clients. That's what we love doing. Yeah.
it's so fun.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, like, this idea of ideas coming up, I'm very physically oriented. So I'm feeling the energy literally come up into the head when people have
Mm-hmm.
ideas, right? It's like bouncing up into the head, which can be quite overwhelming. And frankly, like, just because our brains have the capacity to do these things doesn't mean that like they're happy with it after a while. But I
Mm-hmm.
love that this idea of being able to speaking it out loud to process it back at yourself, like give yourself your own mirror, even.
Yes. Well, you can be your own mirror, right? Because when you say it out loud, you can transcend that ego viewpoint. It's not just in your head and it feels like you're saying it out loud so you can hear it and be more objective. That's why we're so good at giving friends advice, because we're not in the situation. The information is just coming at us. So we're not in it. We can process it more objectively, but we can do that with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're saying it out loud and then you're hearing it back and you can process it using a different part of you. When it's in you, you're like identifying with it. You're like, wow, woe is me. It's all in you. But when you
Yeah.
say it out loud, it's not in you, it's out of you. And then you can look at it and feel it because words carry vibrations. And you can like, no, that's not true. I'm not a piece of shit. No,
Yeah.
I'm not an imposter. I'm not unqualified to do this. No, I'm exactly where I need to be. You know what I mean? You can give yourself the sage advice that you give everybody else.
All right. So you're sitting in your house and you're getting ready to start your day. Like, do you do this like a prophylactic measure or like when there's an issue?
When there's an issue for me,
When there's an issue. Okay.
for me right now, I mean, I speak first thing in the morning. I say, thank you, God, for another day alive. Those are the first words. The first spoken words out of my mouth in the morning is thank you, God, for another day alive. Yeah, that's the first spoken word. Then I'll ask Alexa what the temperature is outside. I'm not kidding. Yeah, that's the second thing that I say. And then I will go ahead, brush my teeth, wash my face, do all that. And then I'll call my dog and I'll say, Lainey, come on, let's go eat. She's right here next to me, my baby girl. She's a golden retriever. And yeah, I don't talk out loud to myself all the time. I
Mm.
actually spend a lot of time in solitude and complete silence because my mind is a very calm, clear place. I don't have a ton of voices in my head anymore. That's how I want my reader to feel. I don't want my reader to
Mm.
have, I'm getting you to a place where I'm at, which is my mind is really clear. And if someone with bipolar disorder, can say that So can you.
Wow.
My mind is not a cluttered, chaotic place. It is a very organized mind. It is a very sound mind. It is a very discerning mind. And I'm very proud of who I've become. And I believe that when you learn how to talk to all the voices in your head, you won't have so many fucking voices in your head. They won't control you. Period.
You're kind of like canceling them out.
What you're doing is, think about it, right? Like in any family, you're always going to have many different types of people. And we should never shun one family member over the other or quiet one family member over the other because one happens to be louder or one you happen to feel sorry for. So you just let one dominate. No, you got to give every family member equal opportunity to speak up and give it what it needs. It's there for a reason. It wants to be heard. But the same thing goes with yourself. You have a family inside of your mind. It's a family of voices. And some of these family members are holding you back. So you got to learn how to talk to these family members or think about it this way. I'm not even a sports person, but you're the quarterback. You, the intelligent, wise self, higher self, right? The one that is just kind of all knowing that exists within all of us. That's your awareness, your consciousness, whatever. Like that's the highest form of you, right? You are the quarterback and you have all these players, AKA these thoughts, these voices. And it's your job as a quarterback to get everyone on board with the same vision so we can go win the Super Bowl, whatever your Super Bowl is. So that's really what this is about. And like, I'm extremely clear, focused, discerning, decisive, because I don't have debating thoughts in my head anymore. I used to. I don't anymore. So that is the result of this work that you can learn when you order my book, Say It Out Loud, at vasavikumar.com.
Well, I'm super happy that you brought up sports because, this conversation's been so great. Even though you're a Yankee fan, it's been really fun. I'm a Red Sox fan, sort of. I'm not huge into baseball, but this Red Sox Yankees.
Yeah, you want to talk shit. I get it. It's fun. Be a Red Sox fan. I'll be the Yankees fan. It's a lot of fun. That's why I play tennis. I play tennis because I love the banter. I love to talk shit, especially when I'm playing with friends of mine. I'm so mean. They all know how I'm vicious when they miss a shot. I'm like, what are you even doing out here? Why are you wasting my time? Like, I'll talk like that, but my friends love it because they love the banter. That part of us needs a place to express itself. We all have that little part of us. We all have different parts of us, its own place to be able to express it. So on the tennis court is where I get to be a little bit of a jerk,
But it's a kind of being a jerk that people are loving you being a jerk, And
yes, because the reason why they love it is because I don't lead with it, right? It's one aspect of me that you only see on the tennis court. I'm not jerky Vasavi everywhere, only on the tennis court, right? And so we have multiple parts. When I'm here doing this interview, I'm like, this is Vasavi as a culmination of all her voices being put to kind of rest and quiet. This is my real voice. This is my bold voice. I call it my bold voice. I have a 6-month training program called Bold Voice. And Bold Voice is the result of having no voices in your head, basically. Then you get to be bold. But we have different parts to us.
So you were saying in your book that, is this the voice of you as a child, this bold voice? Is this your voice before the conditioning? Or is this a voice that you've cultivated?
That's such a good question. My bold voice is a both and. It's like the effervescent, magnetic, charming voice when we were younger, before someone kind of took our spark away and they said, don't laugh too much. Don't be too happy. Because all the adults are fucking miserable. So they try to silence us. It's that. And it's the voice of many years of wisdom. It's like, I know who I am. Because when you're a kid, you don't know who you are. You just are. Right? You just are. And then someone starts to tell you, don't be this way, don't be this way, be this way. Oh, because that's acceptable. And then it's like, wait, who am I? Oh, okay. I'm just going to be whoever you ask me to be. Okay. And then you just kind of make all these mistakes and have all these awful experiences throughout your 20s and 30s. And finally you're like, wait. Okay. I've learned enough. I know it. I know who I am. So it's like who you are and then who you know who you are, because of everything you've been through. So that's an excellent question that you just asked. Thank you. I really love that question.
Well, thank you for the compliment.
Yeah.
Where should we start with this? So I want to start talking to myself. Should I wait for something emotional to come up? Or is there something I can do to spark it?
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. What emotion have you not felt recently? What emotion do you feel uncomfortable feeling? What do you not like feeling?
I would say resentment.
Awesome. Oh, that's a great place to start. You're speaking my language. Well, think about someone that you're really resentful towards, that you keep telling
Yeah.
yourself not to be resentful towards, and then allow yourself to say, I'm fucking pissed at this person. Say whatever it is you want to say. Be resentful. Allow
Yeah.
yourself to say it. If you want to give yourself a timer, give yourself 3 minutes and say out loud how mad you are, how
Mm.
resentful you are, how betrayed you feel, how discarded
Mm.
you feel, whatever it is. Curse that person out. You don't have to tell them, but at least allow yourself to be honest with yourself, because now you're just lying to yourself. And that's the scariest type of situation to be in. Fine, you want to lie to others, that's okay, but don't lie to yourself. Ultimately, don't lie to
Mm.
others either, obviously, but we lie to others because we lie to ourselves, period. So allow yourself to say out loud how resentful you feel. Get it out of you. And if there's more, let it keep going. You're obviously very resentful. That years of saying you're not resentful, or I don't like feeling resentful, or I shouldn't feel resentful, you're going to have a lot of resentment that has to come out. So don't just expect it to like happen overnight, right? Think about if you were resentful towards somebody, which clearly you might be, and this person now wanted to repair a relationship with you. You're not going to just let them back into your life. Hopefully not. They're going to have to work for it, right? They're going to have to repair that trust with you. We have to repair trust with ourselves, because the part of us that's been resentful, that hasn't been allowed to feel resentful because you haven't given yourself the space to feel resentful, now all of a sudden is going to trust to come out and speak up. No. So this is why we say it out loud, because the more you say it, the more there's there. It's a purging. You know this with Ayurveda. I'm a pitta, right? So my digestion is on point. I am great with my digestion. I'm also great with my my emotional digestion. This is emotional digestion. How good is your digestive system working emotionally? Where are you constipated? Clearly with resentment.
Mm.
So this is like a verbal laxative. You need to say it out
That's
loud.
exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Who needs castor oil?
No, just talk.
Nobody.
Just say. Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, last question for you today. What does the wisdom of the body mean to you?
Oh, I love this question. The wisdom of the body. What does that mean to me? I'm very grateful. I've hurt my body a lot. I've done a lot of drugs.
Mm.
I have a lot of people to enter my life, enter into me during periods of our life where we just allowed anything. And still my body carries on. So it's just there, and it's our job to treat it with the respect that it deserves. And it has all the answers that we need. Every part of our body, every crevice of our body has the wisdom that we need to continue to courageously pursue our dreams.
Hmm.
Your body
That's
can speak
beautiful.
to you too. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I like how you really took a moment to feel that one.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for being here. I think you already mentioned your book and how to read more about it and your program, Bold Voice. Yeah? Anything
Yeah.
else you want to tell everybody about today?
Yeah. So I just want to say, connect with me on Instagram. My name is Vasavi. My book can be ordered at vasavikumar.com/order the book. My audiobook will be coming out soon too. I don't know when this episode is going to be aired. Heather, do you know?
It will be probably in after the summer.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So my program starts in August, but that's okay. My book is already out. You can follow me on Instagram. My name is Vasavi. And yeah, just stay connected. Let me know that you listened and liked this episode.
Amazing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
If you are embarking on a fertility journey and are ready to have your mind blown about what your body is really capable of and how it's impacted by the environment, then check out my book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility. You can actually download the introduction to the book for free on my website at heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. Read the intro for free and then buy the rest of this fertility enlightening book pretty much anywhere books are sold. You know, I get so excited. I get this like kind of goosebump feeling when I get a booking from a new client that I haven't met yet. And I get so excited because I know that somebody has made a decision to go really, really, really deep into their healing. because I know that Ayurveda is not a quote unquote normal thing that many people have access to, at least not in the United States where I live. So I know that when someone books with me, that they've really made a decision that they want to go deep into their healing. And so you could do that on my website at heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. You can book me for either a Ayurvedic consultation if you're ready to dive in, or you can also book me for a 15-minute connection call if you're not sure where to go yet. I do have a couple offerings that are not on my website, and we could talk about that. So I look forward to meeting you. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.